Transfer it over to you. Okay, Kathy, you are it.
I am unmuted. So good morning, everybody. Working with buyers in 2023. My name's Cathy Hager, Lantern Realty and Development. And so we're going to try this. I have trouble with this occasionally. So we're going to try it and make sure we get it done right this time. So, okay. Well, this is the screen we want right there. Or yeah, that's the screen we want. Nope, it didn't give it to us. Did it? Okay.
We are good.
Okay. So no, say cancel that.
I don't see that. Oh, yeah, hit cancel.
Okay, how do I hit cancel?
Find your mouse. I don't know.
I know, really. It's right there. I'm feeling, okay, guys, well, I'm still here, so I am not going to mess with it.
We don't see that.
You don't see that. Okay, so we're going to leave that alone then. We're going to hit our PowerPoint and take that one down. Is that the screen you see?
That's the screen I see, minus the meeting box.
I don't have that. I don't know how to get out of that. Anyway, good morning, everybody. I told you I am not technically savvy, but as long as you see, do you see my working with buyers yet?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we'll go from there. And see if, I don't know which one is asking me. Screen share. Wrong one. We want this one. That's the one we want. Okay. How's that? Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay. Good deal. Okay. So working with buyers, who are they and what are you going to do with them? So today we're going to talk about, and is this what you can see?
Yeah.
Okay. Today we're going to talk about whether they're an individual buyer or an investor, how to educate and advise them. The hardest part for me is that it's their choice, not mine. Things you should know. If you don't, how to find out. Are they now or laters? Do you know the difference? The process start to finish and after you're closed. I really enjoy working with all kinds of buyers, but whether they're family buyers for single family resident, land, and I will say maybe an individual buyer, or is it for an investment property? How do you know? What's the difference? And do you want both? Well, we all want some of these investors because the investors are the ones that are going to be continuing to purchase. Most of the time, they're interested in more than one property, which means more than one transaction. Have you looking for certain properties or certain price range? And they're treated like any other buyer, but maybe a cash buyer with no lender. They're great to have in the database. One of the things that I appreciate about my investors is something comes up either on the MLS or someone will call me and say, hey, I've got this property. And, you know, a lot of your investors are people that are going to flip it, especially in the market we're in today. A lot of people are doing that as a job or a side job. But not only that, but investing in real estate is the best way to get a return on your money, with the stock market not doing as good as it has in the past. So they're great to have in your database. Like I said, give them a call when you got something that is in their criteria of what they're looking for. And if it's not something that works for them, then just keep looking for them, but stay in communication with them. They're great to have. The individual home buyer, whether it's residential home or land, usually looking for a single property, and may be more specific with their needs. One of the things that I have found is I do enjoy working with investors, but I enjoy helping people to find a home. One of the reasons that I got into real estate was to make a difference and help people to find a home. Also, we farm. I wanted to find farmland that we could lease for our cows. A lot of times people would buy land and not know what to do with it. So I wanted to have that opportunity to say, hey, you know, you can lease it out. You still get farm credit if you do that. So whichever kind of buyer you have, we're going to talk about what to do with them and how to take care of them today. As a real estate agent, it's important for us to know as much about our market as possible so we can educate our clients and advise truthfully. How do we get that information? We get that information by coming to these classes, or if you're not able to come to the classes, by you can watch them later. I think they always put them on YouTube. You can watch them later. MLS has a great opportunity for you to check into classes that you're interested in. Doing your continued education, you can find out information about things that are coming up, what's going on in the market. As we have seen in the past couple years, the market is a constant change. And as technology changes, our market changes. We just learned some new things this week that are coming into play that I'm not in my 20s anymore. I'm not the smartest with computer technology and texting and Instagram and social media, or as Miss Kim does, TikTok, but it is a tool to learn about your market, to educate about your market. And as a real estate agent, as a professional who has license, and you should know what you're doing, should know how to find this information out and how to be honest about doing it. There's all kinds of things you need to know about in communities. You need to know the zoning. You need to know what CCRs are. You need to know what well and septic. You need to know. You need to know a lot of things about that, and that's what we're going to look at next. Things you should know. First things, documents required. As you know, usually July the 31st, if they're going to have new, if the commission or the Realtors Association puts out new documents for us, that is when they would come into effect. They usually give us a grace period of time to use the older documents, but know what documents are required. If you are making an offer as a buyer's agent on a piece of property, you're not going to use a standard 2T contract. You're going to use a contract for the purchase of land. So you need to know that to make sure you've got the right information. If you're doing a different type of property, I can't think, my brain went down there, but if you're doing a different kind of property, then you need to know what document you've got to have for that property. How to find out information on deeds and tax records. One of the things that we've talked about and that kind of have an issue with is we take for granted that listing agent has put the correct information. Well, if you look at the commission's disciplinary action, you will see that one of the main complaints is on listing agents taking the tax records and putting them in as that's the truth. And that's not always the truth, because measurements could have changed. They could have got measured incorrectly the first time. And guess what? It's your responsibility. You need to know that. Find out about information about the deeds. You need to know that. Why do you need to know that? Because sometimes the deed might be pulled up as it belonging to one person, and the listing agent's got these other people that are selling it. How is that possible? Could have been an estate. Could have been that deed's not been changed. But you need to know that. It's your responsibility as a buyer's agent to know that. Development in your area. We just had the opportunity to go to one of our developers. You got through homes, you got DR Horton. You've got a lot of developers in your area that are building new homes, townhouses. You need to know that. Why? Because that is a benefit to your client. And I encourage you to go visit them. I mean, they have a lunch and learn a lot of times at these. And not only that, but getting introduced to them, they have opportunities that you might not be aware of if you didn't go visit that development. Your lenders and vendors that are available. Chris just posted a vendors list. I encourage every real estate agent to have a vendors list. when I have work done to my home, the person that's doing the work is going to be somebody I trust, and somebody that I can communicate with. And I usually say, hey, I appreciate what you've done. You've done a good job for me. Did I put you on my vendors list? Share that with others. I mean, a lot of times you'll see this on our Facebook page. They'll say, hey, does anybody know somebody that does fences? And I'm going to go ahead and apologize. My throat might be a little scratchy, but I can keep talking. I promise you. That's why I'm calling me Chatty Cathy. Lenders, be in touch with who your lenders are. Know what programs they offer. I don't know everything that's offered right at the moment. I do know that things change for them. And if you've been in the market for the past couple of years, you know that it's good to have a lender that you can call and say, oh my goodness, interest rates were here. They're here now. Is that the best you can do? What else can you do to help them? Know that that's our job, to get that information and to have that. I even have people that they'll call me sometimes and say, hey, what do you think? Should I sell now? Should I wait? Should I buy now? Should I wait? What's the market look like? Well, I can't tell them what it's going to do in the future, except I can tell them what the MLS or the Realtors Association is telling us, or my lender is telling us that's coming up, that they're aware of. That, I mean, they don't change these overnight and them not have programs. They know what's coming up in the short future. Use them as an asset. They are a great tool. And then the market. Oh my goodness, know your market. Know what houses are selling. Know what they're selling for. What we're running into now is, back in 21 and 22, houses were going up. And I mean, people were offering crazy amounts over asking price, coming in with cash, giving $30,000 to $50,000 in due diligence. What? Well, that's changed. That's changed. And it's changed because money's not cheap like it was at one time. And yes, ma'am, I'm sorry. Just holler at me. She's asking me a question. Go ahead.
In this market, how much would you save for earnest money due diligence? In this market, current market?
In this current market, due diligence, honestly, to me, depends on how current the home is, how popular, I guess is what I should say. If it's in a neighborhood that people are wanting and have been wanting, and how do you know that? Because houses in that neighborhood sold before they really, I mean, when they were coming soon. I would say that my due diligence would be a little bit higher. I still would not encourage over $10,000 in this market. Now, everything's negotiable. I would encourage more in earnest money, because to me, putting more money in earnest money shows them, look, we're not in this just to cancel out. We're in for the long haul. You're going to get this money. But if something comes up that you're unaware of, do you really want to take that person's money away from them like that? I mean, I look at a listing, a seller, just like I do with the buyer, but as a buyer's agent, I don't encourage them to give a lot of money. And I tell them that's negotiable. They could come back and say, hey, you only offered $3,500 in earnest money. We're asking for 5,000, and there used to be like a rule of thumb, a percentage of what my due diligence and earnest money should be. That got kind of thrown out the window with the current market, the way that it went. But I do see the market coming back down to a more normal situation.
Numeric wise.
Right. I would still say I wouldn't go over $10,000 on anything less than 400,000. But again, there's a sweet spot there on housing. And it used to be 250 to 350. Now it's like 350 to 5. If it's in a development that houses don't come on the market that much, you want it, you want it, and you as the buyer's agent have said, look, I've kind of looked at this. This house is going to sell quick. If you want it, you're going to have to put the money on it and be serious about it.
And make sure your buyer knows that when they hand that money over,
They don't
they
get it
don't
back.
get it back.
In fact, a
I
lot
mean,
of times, right,
Purchase price, but
a lot of times, you want them to sign off. And I'll give you this scenario. I've never fired a buyer until last year. And I actually had to let her go. But we went under contract on 8 different houses. She put her money down, and I'm not talking little money. I'm talking $3,000 to $5,000. And then we get right there, due diligence, and back out. I mean, she probably spent over 15,000 to 25,000. I mean, I know the exact number, but I mean, she spent a lot of money because she couldn't commit. I made her sign off every time. You understand, if you back out, you're not getting this money back. I mean, they're not getting the money back. As long as they understand that, sometimes they're willing. Yes, I want it this bad. I'm going to put this. I hope that sellers agents are explaining to them that it's not the $40,000 and $50,000 market it once was. Is that not still going to happen? I see it still happening occasionally. You know, know your market though. Know that. And then fair housing. Oh, fair housing is a big deal. It's a very big deal. You got to be fair to everybody. You got to be careful what you say to everybody. Do not assume because and I'll use you as Hispanic. Don't assume because they're Hispanic they can't afford it, or don't assume that. And Lord have mercy, don't say nothing about it, because if you do, you're in violation of fair housing. Everybody deserves the opportunity to have a home. Fair housing is punishable. Be careful and be mindful. Know the process of buying and selling, understand what steps they are, and who to call if you don't know. Who do you call? It's kind of funny when I hear that. I always think of Ghostbusters. Call Ghostbusters. Who are you going to call? Ghostbusters. Well, the first person you should call would be your broker in charge. Call them. Call your broker in charge. Sometimes, if you got a question about something, call Miss Melissa. I mean, she's handling documentation, and call Melissa and ask her. Call one of the other owners, Paula, Chris. Call and ask them. If you've made friends with a seasoned agent that's done it a while, call and ask them. Especially if you know somebody that has had the same instance that you have. You're always able to call and ask questions on the MLS if you don't understand something, but call somebody or find out how to do it. And I'm honest with my buyers. If they ask me a question, for instance, the city of Kannapolis has a 2030 plan. It's actually affecting the neighborhood that I live in. And so some of my neighbors who are potential buyers of property around them will say, what's going on? What is happening now? Well, if I don't know, I say, I honestly don't know right now, but I will find out for you. So make sure you find out.
on buyers,
Okay.
I am starting to see contracts come through where buyers are asking and getting money towards closing costs and home warranties.
Yes.
So those two things are starting to come back into play.
Absolutely. And I also think that is a great thing for the buyer to have a home warranty. I think as the seller, that is a good faith measure for them to offer that. And that's one of the things when we get into the closings we're going to look at. Are they now or laters? Are they now or laters? And how do you know? Screening potential buyers. As I said, I actually had to let a client go last year, a buyer. I did not realize how much time that consumed from me for one person. And they were not a person that was completing the transaction. So screening potential buyers is an important step in working with buyers. Have a questionnaire. Make yourself a questionnaire. that when you talk to this buyer, whether you talk to them on the phone, whether they call and want to see a house, learn to ask specific questions. So make yourself a questionnaire um, in what they're looking for to see if the buyer is in a hurry to buy or just window shopping. Many CRMs will let you categorize them, and they'll let you break them down into whether they're people that are urgent or not. So be careful not to spend all your time on window shoppers when you have more serious buyers. I know it kind of feels like I'm kind of going through this kind of quick, but I really want to get to the part about the closing and how to work with your buyers on the closing. So this is how I categorize mine. I do hashtag hot, which means they're ready, willing and able, pre-approved, and they know what they want. They've called me on the phone, got my pre-approval letter. I want to go see this house. I'm ready to go. Let's go look at it. I've been waiting on it to come on the market. I'm ready to make an offer. And then hashtag getting hot. They're ready and willing, but not able. It could be that their credit's not where it needs to be. Help them with that. Help them with that. That's one of the tools that we should have, is how to help them with that. And the lenders are really good about working with people to show them how to get their credit score up. Sometimes it's just a matter of paying off things that they actually can pay off at the closing that would increase their credit score. Or they got to sell their current home. Well, as you know, sometimes you can do a contingency on I can buy this if my house sells. So you need to know at that time, when you're talking to them, is your house in a market that can sell quickly? And y'all know this is such a different, that's why I said working with buyers 2023, because the market a year ago, 2 years ago, houses did not stay on the market. We did not have that. That was so great a time, but they are starting to stay on the market a little longer now. That's okay, as long as they understand that and they know that. And if they make an offer on a house in contingency, make sure the listing agent knows, hey, this house might not sell that quick. So, and then the last one is not so hot. Sometimes you have them that are just looking. They have very specific requirements. If a house comes open in this neck of the woods, let me know. They're waiting on interest rates to go down. They're just thinking about it. It could be that they're looking for a second home, but they really want the one that they want. And so I really kind of categorize them. They're still my buyers. They're still in my database. They're still somebody that I'm working. There's still people that I touch with. I either send them cards, or I make email to them, or I just pick up the phone. Tuesdays are my days to call and check on people, or send out information, but I stay in touch with them. They're still my buyers. They're still in my database. And then, do you know the difference in pre-approved or pre-qualified? I stuck this in here because I felt like it was very important, because I don't think our buyers know the difference a lot of times. And I know a lot of agents don't know the difference in being pre-qualified or being pre-approved. I can pick up the phone and I can call a lender and I can say, hey, I'm going to look at a house with this client of mine. I need you to get a pre-approval for them. If you can, I need to make sure they can afford the house we're going to look at. So they pick up the phone, they call them. It's a basic review by the credit by the lender. There's no documentation required. They've not sent in no W-2s. They've not sent in anything showing that they make that kind of money. It is not a sure thing. They've not filled out an application. And so they're just getting pre-approved. And I will say this while I'm at this point, they get approved for $400,000. You get that letter at hand, they're approved for $400,000. We're only looking at a house they're asking $325,000 for. So we're only going to make an offer probably $315,000, $318,000. I'm going to ask that lender to give me a pre-approval letter for only 318 or 320. Why would I do that if they're approved for more? Well, we're just giving that pre-approval letter in with a offer to purchase. It's not a sealed contract. The listing agent gets it and she says, oh, okay. Well, we really want to get 325. That's okay, because they're pre-approved for that. We can do that. But if she knows that they're pre-approved for 400, she might tell her buyers, and it's not being dishonest, it's taking care of your buyer. And they might come up and say, hey, we want 350. Well, they can afford 400, we're gonna ask 350. So make sure you're taking care of your buyer. Know that it's just a pre-approval. It's really not a sure thing. Then pre-qualified. A mortgage application has been submitted and documentation has been reviewed. They have a specific loan amount and down payment decided and interest rate discussed. Sometimes they'll even go into a rate lock for a certain period of time on that. That's really a good thing because a rate lock will seal that for them. It's a good thing because now they know my house payment's going to be $1,500, $1,800. Okay. Well, is that with escrow? Well, with escrow, we're looking at more like $2,200. Can they afford that? This gives them a more clear picture of what they can afford. You need to know the difference. They need to know the difference. Educating them, again, is part of our job. So let's meet the buyers. You're just starting out with the buyer. They want direction on where and how to get started. Some people have went to Zillow, and some people have went to Redfin, and they've went to realtor.com, and they're like, my friend, they bought a house, so I'm just going to go and to an open house, and I'm going to make an offer. Well, they need to know the difference. They think they know what to do, but trust me, buyers are hiring you because you're the professional. So the first contact, we're going to find out what they want and what they need. I usually ask them, what are 3 things you can't live with and 3 things you can't live without? Do you have a certain area that you're looking for? If a buyer is unsure of what and where they would like to buy a home, you as a professional should give them all the tools available to make that decision. What tools are available? You set them up on an MLS search. When they get an email, you can go in there and you can do a specific area. You can do a specific need, specific price range on the MLS. I encourage you to take some classes to show you how to help you to be better at that. They get an email, you get an email. Excuse me. So they call you on the phone like, hey, I just got this on the MLS. I want to go see this house. This is what I've been looking for. You pull it up on yours and like, you know what? It really is. Let's do it. You encourage them to visit open houses and new construction. We went through a period we didn't have open houses. I love open houses. Why? Because that is a free showing for your client. It might be something that is in the neighborhood that they're looking for, they think. And so you're actually able to look at the neighborhood. You're actually able to see interaction in the neighborhood because a lot of times the neighborhood will come and see an open house. And then you're able to look at a house. And she might come in, she's like, oh, you know what? I don't want my kitchen at the back of the house. I don't want my bedroom on the first floor. I don't, and they actually don't really know what they want sometimes until they go to an open house or new construction. As I was telling you before, these housing developments that are coming up, they always have show houses. And then they also show you the options that you have. And they also offer financing sometimes. And you still get a commission. I mean, it's not like you take them to new construction, you as the buyer's agent are kicked out. No, you should have a buyer's agreement with them. We're going to talk about that in just a little bit. And these developments honor that. And they pay commission because they're like the listing agent. So open houses and new construction, I truly encourage that. Make sure they get pre-approved or pre-qualified, and then go over the buying process with them so they have full disclosure of process. Why is that important? As we just learned this week, if they're looking at buying a mobile home. That's there. I mean, it could be super nice, but we just found out, I mean, they might not can get, the information that they need. And I'm talking about during the title search, it might cost up to $4,500 to get that cleared. Do they understand that if they can't get clear title? Do they understand that they're gonna need a down payment most of the time? Getting pre-qualified, a great tool, because like I said, they know what they can apply for. And if y'all can't see it, I'm talking with my hands. I just can't help it. But also they need to know what the process is. You're gonna have to have inspections. During that inspection period, I mean, this is not something that you go pick the house out, we go under contract, in 2 weeks you're moving in. If they're currently living in a home that needs to be sold, they need to understand what process that is. Are they in a position to where they can buy a home and still live in the home they're in until that process is finished and then sell it? There's all kinds of options, but meeting them, finding out what their needs are, walking them through that, understanding what the process is, and make sure that you have giving them, working with real estate agent, and explained the buyer's agreement. And we're going to look at that next. So buyer's agreement and working with the real estate agent document. This is required not only by the commission, it's also required by your firm as part of your paperwork, and you will not get paid if this is not in there. We also seen in the disciplinary actions where someone actually did not even get the working with real estate agent signed until after the closing, and they sent it to them. Oh my goodness. Well, the commission rule on working with real estate agent 58A.0104 explains we as real estate agents must explain the various types of agency that can be held with clients. And it is for your protection to understand that, what dual agency is, what dual agent is. You need to understand that. And it must be signed at first substantial contact. I said this before, and it's kind of funny, but a friend of mine said this. She said, what do? Go in and say, it's great. You know, I really want to help you buy this home, but whoa, stop, wait a minute. I've got to explain this document to you. No, you know when to explain it. You come in, they start talking about what they can afford, what they want to do. And so then you start explaining to them. I do want to explain to you that if I represent you, there's a couple forms that we need to go over and I need for you to sign. This is not a contract. Working with real estate agent is not a contract. It is something that is for my protection, that you understand. Oh my goodness, how many times have people said to me, now wait a minute here. They're a lantern agent, you're a lantern agent. I didn't want dual agent. No, that's dual agency. That means they work for Lantern, I work for Lantern, but we are independent contractors. Dual agent means I represent the buyer and the seller. They need to know that. They need to sign off. And when they ask me that, I say, well, you know, I explained this to you and you signed it and I give you a copy of it. That's important that they have that, the buyer's agreement. You must explain it to the client. You can sign it through .loop, just like you can the working with real estate agent. But showing the buyer's agreement to them and explaining it to them, even on doing them signing it through .loop, you need to have an email explaining that to them or a text explaining that to them. And then you need to put that in your loop, because they need to understand what it means. What is on that buyer's agreement that's so important? Well, it sets their expectations of what your duties are to them. it explains to them about the commission, where the commission comes from, who's paying the commission, a time frame of the transaction. I had this happen, it's been a few years back, but I had somebody say, well, we're just gonna not work with you anymore. We're not gonna work. And I'm like, well, did I do something wrong? No, we actually know the seller, and it's not gonna be on the market much longer. And they've agreed that when it comes off the market, we're just gonna buy it directly from them. Thank you for your time. Well, if they have that buyer's agreement, they understand and they know that there's a time frame that can't happen or I still get paid. And not only that, but if they understand, I've heard people say the sellers are the ones paying my commission. Well, they might be, they might be paying my commission, but my fiduciary duty is to you as the buyer. And that buyer's agreement, it helps clear up anything that they might have questions about. So yes, it can go to dot loop. They can sign it that way, but I encourage you to make sure you explain it to them. Why they get the dot loop? They're not reading dot loop. It says sign here, sign here. They click on it, their signature goes on it. And I'm telling you, technology is going to get more and more to where people can do that. I don't want to have a buyer that I've never met or never had a relationship with. Okay. And I know it happens. I know people say all the time, I've never even met my buyer. They did all their paperwork through dot loop. The paperwork was sent from the attorney to them. I've never even met them. Well, you need to build a relationship with them. Why is that important? Because my buyers are my future of my business. I want a relationship with them. And not only that, but fraud is as real in this market as it's ever been. And the opportunity for fraud is really out there. So let's get into what do we do with that buyer? What are we going to do with that buyer? Wow, this buyer's ready to go and I'm ready to go. So he's got pre-approval from lender. He knows the house they want, ready to make an offer. And if it looks as good in person as it does on the MLS, I don't know if y'all have had that happen, but I've had that happen a lot. They'll get in the house and they go, oh my goodness, who, man, they had a great photographer because it don't look nothing like the pictures on the MLS. I also know that sometimes investors will say, hey, I want to make a cash offer. They've never seen the property. I encourage you as an agent, schedule a showing for yourself. Go up there. I've had clients that were out of town and I would schedule the appointment, go in and do a video walkthrough. But I physically put my eyes on the house. It was there. I seen what the neighborhood was. And guess what? It might look good, but there might be a trash dump behind the house, or it might be at the end of a dirt road. This is no lie. I went and looked at a beautiful house at the end of dirty dirt road. It was up in North Wilkesboro, dirty dirt road. And so it was bumpy. It was hard to get in. House was great, but somebody needs to put their eyes on it. Okay, but this buyer ready to go. So they call you, you schedule through Showtime to go to the house. Well, there's something that I didn't put in here that I actually do, and I call the agent, listing agent, and I say, I've got a real eager client. We're going to look at your house. Is there anything that you can tell me about it that might not be here? At that time, she could say to me, I'm fixing to go in here and put that we need to have all offers, best offers by 5 o'clock. So I'm glad you called me. So when we go look at the house, I tell them that, look, they're already getting offers in, but she's going to give us till 5 o'clock if you want to make an offer. So let's look at it good. Make sure you got all the paperwork ready. If you don't do paperwork, print it out, taking it to them, which I do. I print out paperwork and I have to scan it. Take your laptop with you. Take your tablet with you. Have it ready for them to sign. If you're going to do a contract right then, if they're that eager, they want this house, they like it, they want to put an offer in, have everything ready. Do as much of your homework about the property as you can before you take the clients to see the house. What does that homework entail? It entails calling that agent, finding out what's going on. It also entails looking up any information that you can. So much of it is already in the MLS. Oh my goodness. They even say now, look at comparables of this property. Yes, ma'am.
So besides looking at the deeds,
Yes.
besides looking for CCRs, what other investigation are we supposed to do with evidence and the home inspection after home inspection too?
Well, this is prior to the home inspection.
Oh.
So this is actually going to look at the property. They're wanting to make an offer. We're ready to write the contract. I actually go to the realist report. And the realist report kind of tells me if it's been on the market before. It tells me the agent's telling me it's so many square feet. This is the realist report's telling me, or with this tax card basically, it's telling me that it's different square footage. It also tells me, and I can tell you what me and Melissa talked about before the class is I looked up a piece of property, and when I went, I looked at the agent, I looked at all his listings. That same piece of property is listed 3 different ways. It's listed, not only is it listed for the 38 acres we were looking at, but it's listed as 70 acres and it's listed commercial and land. Well, it might be there's extenuating circumstances to that. The agent should tell me that. I need to call him and ask him that. But I try to make sure that I have done as much homework as I can. Do I know about how many houses have sold in that area? Have they sold fast? Do I know if they're building a big development right behind it? Or are they fixing to put a landfill behind it? As much information as I can find out. If it's in the city, most of the time I can find out. I try to look at the CCRs. Why is that important? I try to see what the HOA is. You can pull up a site on the HOAs. Why? Because some HOAs have went from like $500 a year to $1,500 a year. And it tells in there, we're fixing, our rates are changing. And sometimes the listing agent don't have HOA information in there. So you have to find that out. That makes a difference because of that HOA money is included. It could be that this house is fixing to go in foreclosure. It could be that it's a rental property. I try to find out as much information that might be helpful for my client as I can. I wish I had access. I just found this out. I was talking to an insurance agent. Matthew Young is really good with Geico, and he was talking about the glue report, about the clue report. I called it the glue report because it sticks to the person when they leave. But the clue report kind of tells if there's been a fire in the house. We don't have that access, but it's always good to hook up with an insurance agent that might give you that information. Anything I can do in the time frame that I've got. They call me and we're looking at it at 2:00 and it's 11 o'clock. I'm going to hustle and try to find out as much as I can.
And check to see if it's in a flood zone.
Check to see if it's in a flood zone. Quick. I mean, these are things that are very quick easy to find out. Zoning could be changing in that area too. That's why, well, for the city of Kannapolis, you can go into cityofkannapolis.com and it'll actually just look at zoning and it'll tell you what areas. I will tell you, Chris Puckett is on the zoning board. Questions you can ask, very quickly to one of our owners. And then I download the disclosure on the property, the MOG and the lead-based paint. If they don't have that on there, call them.
Get it before you submit it.
Get it before you submit it, because
if they don't have the disclosures on the MLS and your buyer wants to submit an offer, you contact a listing agent and say, "Hi, I didn't see the disclosures on MLS. Will you please send those to me because my client would like to submit an offer?" Because you could submit an offer, get it accepted, and then see those disclosures later and be like, "Oh no, they didn't want."
Right.
Yeah.
Things you didn't know.
I actually had something that happened yesterday. We're looking at a house and I was looking at me doing my work. I was looking at the disclosures and everything. And you would think the seller agent was going to look at the disclosures too. The seller signed where my buyer is supposed to sign. The seller also signed where the selling agent was supposed to sign. And I catched two disclosures that were wrong, so I called her, I'm like, hey, this is wrong, can we get that fixed, because my buyer wants to look at it. So they got it fixed that same hour, but if I didn't check, then I would have got in trouble. Or not in trouble, but it would just
It'd be
been
that,
bad
that,
for
that,
Yeah.
yeah. So
And-
also look,
One of the other things that right,
old listings.
old listings of it. That's
And
what,
And the disclosures that
Right.
are in those old listings.
that's what the realist report's good for, because it'll give you the MLS numbers of how it was listed before. And that's how you can tell, house had a fire, house was flooded. You know, and right, those disclosures give you that information. It amazes me at how many people don't have that information, and you have to call and ask for it, because what I was told at a continuing ed class is you submit an offer without that documentation, you can't really go under contract without having those disclosures, and that is a complete contract. It's having the MOG and the disclosure and the the lead-based paint with the contract. That has to be together. And of course, we have to have it because we don't get, that has to be part of our paperwork in the dot loop. So, okay, here we go. We're going under contract. So what do we do now? We make an offer and is accepted. Now, sometimes it's not as easy as that. Sometimes we make an offer and I don't actually do a new contract if we're negotiating a little bit on the money. So the agent emails me and says, we like your offer. They just want, instead of 5,000 on the earnest money, we want 2,500 due diligence, 2,500 earnest money. Because, I mean, really, there was a time we didn't really pay due diligence, and there are people coming in from other states that say, hey, we don't have due diligence in that state. Well, you're buying in North Carolina, so you do have it. So you make the offer, it gets accepted. That's great. Make sure you get an executed contract. What does that mean? Executed means everybody has signed all the documents. That also means on the lead-based paint, you as the buyer's agent have signed acknowledging about the lead-based paint. Make sure you do due diligence, earnest monies, make sure due diligence and earnest monies are given to correct parties. I like to get them myself if they're local. Sometimes it's not done that way. Sometimes they're like, can I Venmo it to them? Well, actually, some attorneys, you can now, but you have to call them. They give you the site that you can actually have the earnest money transferred that way. With the due diligence, make sure if it's a check and they're going to mail it directly to the sellers, then make sure you got a copy of the check, and then make sure you get page 15, I think, page 15 signed stating that they received the due diligence, and make sure that check clears. The reason I say that is because I have been a couple of days before closing and a buyer say, my due diligence check never cleared. The earnest check did, but the due diligence check never cleared. And the seller did not think that they could cash it right then. Well, that's really not your job to tell them that, but it is your job to call the listing agent and say, hey, you need to make sure your seller cashes that check. I mean, because that money is coming off of the sale price of the home, and we want to make sure everybody's clear and that we're good to go. Contact the attorney's office, send a copy of the executed contract, and schedule a closing date. Contact the lender and send them a copy of contract, closing attorney, and closing date. Order inspections, they will be contacting the buyer for information and how to pay. Make sure you do your due diligence in a timely manner. And if you see that you're going to need more time, let the other agent know as soon as possible. It does make things a little bit easier. Why would you have to do that? Why is that important? we went through a process and we still have this time frame of getting perk test on land, but it was 4 to 6 weeks. Some people chose to get soil scientists. They were still 3 to 5 weeks out. So if you know that ahead of time, if you know that you're gonna have to do that, then go ahead and make that time frame. Communicate with that listing agent on that time frame. Also, there are times that you may have repairs that are going to need to be done. Okay. So that might be taking longer. So I'm going to go back to after you get your inspection report back, go over it with your buyer, come up with a plan. If you have requests for repairs, it's a good time to have estimates to present to seller with request, and don't wait to the last minute to submit your due diligence request. At 3 o'clock on the day of that, you've only got to 5 o'clock to get that taken care of. That is not kosher. That is not going to work. That is going to make a listing agent upset because they've got to contact the buyer. They've got to do what they can do. It may be that the seller knew that that was a problem and was prepared for it. But what if they can't get in touch with them? I mean, then you're going to have to extend your due diligence. You want to communicate with your buyer, with your lender, with your attorney, and with the other agent. And don't always assume that everybody is on the same time frame that you are. But if you have a seller who wants to do repairs themselves, request that it be completed by licensed contractor. Also, we are seeing a lot of times people say, you know, I understand, yes, that needs to be done. What if we give you $3,000 for the floor to be repaired rather than having to deal with it right now? You know, the water heater leaked, you know, what if we give you 2,000? I mean, there's a lot of times it's much easier for them to give that to you. I had an instance where the roof needed to be repaired. It showed up on the inspection report. It had like 4 layers of roof underneath it. And so the seller was like, you know what? We were going to replace that roof anyway. We will replace it. Well, they couldn't get it replaced until really after our closing. So that took some negotiating. Well, then the buyer wanted, they wanted architectural shingles and they wanted to pick the color out. So it was going to be a little bit more. We worked all that out by communicating. You know, we made sure that things were signed off. We actually made sure that the check for the final payment of the roofer was with the attorney, so that even though the seller was paying it, the buyer could pay the vendor that was doing the work, the roofer, after the work was completed. Work things out. There are ways to make things work. It is so important that you communicate. It is so important that you get in touch with the attorney's office as soon as possible. It's so important that you get in touch with the lender, find out who you're going to be dealing with. I've had people say, well, I'm not actually the one that's going to be handling it, but you need to talk to so-and-so. Get somebody that you're going to be communicating back and forth with, because they're not going to be the underwriter at the lender's office. And then you might have someone in the attorney's office. The paralegal is usually the one you're going to deal with there. Know your paralegals. Try to give them as much information as you can. These are all important things that is your responsibility to do. At the same time, you are responsible for getting the information about the property. You know, it may be that it's not just an inspection report that you need. It may be that you're scheduling with the lender for an appraisal. You need to know when that's happening. You need to make sure that that's happening in a timely manner. This is all due diligence. This is stuff that has to be done. You also need to make sure that if you got a well that you're getting that well water tested, you're getting that well checked. Um, check that vendor list. If you've never done that before, call somebody that has. Go on our Facebook page and say, hey, never had to request having a septic pump or inspected. What do you think of that? How do you get that? Who do I call? I will say that I do encourage that when the septic inspector or the septic person is called, that you ask them, when you do the inspection, if you see that it needs to be pumped, you're already in there, you've already dug the cap out. How much more is it to have that pumped? Okay. They give you that information. You get in touch with the seller. It could be that when you have it inspected, you get it pumped at the same time. It's only a little bit different, you know? But if you've agreed with the other agent that, hey, if something happens and we can't complete this transaction, will your sellers be responsible for pumping the septic? That happens sometimes. You also need to know if your client is prepared to pay for these things. I have had instances where the inspector agreed to be paid at closing, but they do ask that the buyer give them a credit card that they can keep on file if for some reason the transaction does not go to the closing table. Work with your buyers, work with the attorney's office, the lender, work with your inspectors. You are the liaison. You are doing whatever it takes to make it easy on your buyer to buy this property. You also need to be coaching that buyer. I mean, because we're almost there. Okay. We're almost there. We've made it through due diligence. We've had our request made. We've had everything answered. We have made it through due diligence. Keep check with the lender to make sure you're on track for the closing date. Why is that important? Because it could be that that underwriting is holding things up and we're not going to make it. We're not going to have clear to close. Find out what the issue is. If you know it's a definite, get with the attorney's office, get with the listing agent. You have a time frame on your contract of 7 days. We used to get 14, but you have a time frame on your contract of 7 days that you as the buyer agent can change that date. If you see that you're not going to make it in that time period, it does come up occasionally when you have, especially when they're selling their house and you've run into, you're on a contingency that their house sells and you are under contract with that. They're running a little late, so their house is not going to sell at the right time. I have also had quite a few double closings where they've closed on their house that morning. Then they've closed on the house that they're buying that afternoon. It takes a little while for things to transpire and for money to be transferred. Make sure you can do that. In order to do that, you have got to be on your toes and you have got to be in touch with people and know what's going on. Make sure you're keeping your buyer informed along the way about what is going on, about what needs to happen. I mean, they're renting a moving van. They need this van for this day. They can't move into the house they're buying yet. It may be that they're moving out of their house that morning and they're getting a motel room. Their stuff's in the moving van and they're not moving into their house till the next morning. I've had that happen. Also have had to get a motel room for a couple days because the sellers of the house we were moving into could not get out of the house in time. So my buyers didn't have to pay for that, neither did I. The seller's agent paid for that. Work things out, make things agreeable. Would I have paid for it? I would have helped if I had to. Okay. Also, make sure the buyer is adhering to the 10 commandments and isn't spending money before they close. The lender will usually do a credit report before closing. 10 Commandments is not, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal. That's not it, not the one that Moses took. It is the 10 Commandments that's in your documents on real estate, on telling them not to go make a large purchase, not to buy a car before it happens, not to go buy out furniture for everything. To remember, the lender will most likely do a credit report before they close. And they need to make sure that they're ready to go. Whew, we're clear to close. That is amazing. Clear to close. You're in touch with that paralegal's attorney's office. You're in touch with the lender. The lender has sent the package, the closing package, to the attorney's office. They've got the documents. So prior to closing, though, you're still not finished. Any invoices that need to be paid at closing, you need to make sure they're on that closing document. You need to make sure your numbers are correct. You need to make sure that if they are paying off a car with this, that is on that closing document. You need to make sure that if there's money coming from the seller to the buyer, that is on there. You need to check your numbers. If you are paying for something, if you've decided to give your buyers a home warranty and you are paying for it and it is coming out of your commission, it needs to be on there, on that closing document. Closing documents should be to you 72 hours before closing. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes you're pushing to get them, but stay on it. Make sure they're right. Make sure your buyers have seen a copy of it before they go to the closing table. When they get to the closing table, you're done. You're done. You get to the closing table, you're just standing there holding their hand, telling them what a wonderful job it was, smiling at them, how excited you are they're getting in their home. Make sure that they've done everything to get to this point. Make sure their monies have been transferred. Explain to them about fraud, wire fraud. That's all in your contract. And please go over that contract with them. I had this happen last year. We had a client that I was actually on the listing side of it, and a contract was submitted to them. They didn't like it because everything on that contract didn't apply to them. They're like, we just want the little things on here that apply to us. No, you need all of that to be on there because it applies to somebody. And this is a contract that is approved by the state of North Carolina. But you know what I realized? They don't understand it. That's why we got our license. That's why we went to school. Explain, disclose, educate. That's our job. You made it. You made it. Here we are, closing day. Woohoo! Yay. And you want to make this as important for them as you can. There's a couple things that people do sometimes, and you'll see we have advertisements a lot of time. They'll do lunch and learns for people that give closing gifts. I encourage the closing gift, but I encourage the closing gift with your name on it and your firm. Why? Because you want them to remember. The knives are a great gift. I'm telling you, they're a great gift. Cutting boards, a great gift. Because every time you get it out for a charcuterie board, they're like, oh, did your lantern agent give that to you? She must really like you. Does it cost a little bit of money? Yes, it does. But guess what? The satisfied buyer is the best referral you can have and will be, I put will be, statistics show they will be a repeat customer on many occasions. Stay in touch with them. Send them a holiday email. Hey, it's Valentine's Day. You know, I just loved being your agent. Happy Valentine's. Something easy. And you don't have to do all this stuff yourself. Trust me. There are all kinds of little companies out there that'll do it for you. Or there's CRMs that will add that to what you got. 1 year anniversary. Send them an anniversary card, you know, like you would your spouse on their closing, or just thinking of you. It's a nice touch. Working with buyers can be a challenge, and it is a lot of work. I heard Chris say this on his working with sellers listings on, the reason he liked working with sellers is because, he had one that he only had to visit them twice. It was quicker. Does he still have to do his homework? He did have to do his homework. Did he still have to know things? He did have to know things. But every listing agent out there does not do their homework. Every listing agent out there does not have all the information in there. Every listing agent has not walked through the house and said, oh my, there's a crack in the wall. Wonder where that come from. Is there foundation issues? But as a buyer's agent, you've walked through that house. You know what you think might be wrong with it. You know that maybe they were smokers in the house, or you see where they've had cats or dogs, and you look at your buyers and you say, you know, maybe this is not the one for you because I know you got an allergy problem. And that was one of the things you said you couldn't live with. It might be a challenge. It might be a lot more work, but I promise you, it is a great reward. And just the opportunity to have that relationship with them. Some of my buyers are still my friends from way back, you know, and they'll call and they'll say, hey, I just told somebody that you were my agent back in 2017 and you helped us get in the house and we really enjoyed it and you made it easy for us. That's the whole goal. That's the whole goal. Is it hard sometimes? Yes. It's a little bit of work, but guess what? That's what we do. That's what we get paid for. I love working with buyers. I hope this is helpful. And if you have questions, call me. I'll try to help you all I can. I work with mobile homes a lot. That's a little tricky. You need to know what you got to know. And you don't know what you don't know. Ask. But have a great day. Thank you very much. How do I get out of it?
Thank you, Kathy.
Whew, thank you. Thank you for watching, Miss Michelle.
Oh, you're welcome. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.